For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to an all-new edition here tonight of Motorsports Madness on Speed77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman and Tom Baker, along with Kyle Souza tonight, joining us at the round table as we take you through all the latest from around the world of motorsports. It's going to be a fast, action-packed 2 hours of the madness here tonight, a special extended edition, and we're going to kick it off right now. We've got a lot of talk to get to this evening, Tom, including interviews from 2 of Andretti Autosports' rising talents, Shelby Blackstock and Garrett Grist. We've got a lot of action from Fontana to talk about, 2 last lap passes. Boy, if you were a motorsports fan this weekend, you certainly got your money's worth.
Well, no question. And it doesn't matter if you're a fan of NASCAR or if you were a fan of some of the local racing that happened. At least I can speak for some of the local racing around the Charlotte area. Certainly quite a bit of that, and want to touch on a little bit of the action that took place at Hickory Motor Speedway this past Saturday as well. I had the chance to go up there and catch the Coma Unwind Modified Madness show. And boy, the Modifieds put on a heck of a race there. We'll talk a little bit about that later on as well. But you're right. Certainly the race fans getting more than their money's worth. And boy, NASCAR, the business in the NASCAR series is definitely picking up, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I want to turn to Kyle on this one too, because I know he was just as enamored as I was with all the action from Fontana this weekend. Kyle, if you were a fan out in Southern California this weekend and you went to Auto Club Speedway, you know, a lot of these fans have talked about, the intermediate tracks aren't providing any good racing. Hello, good racing. 2 last lap passes, the most lead changes in the history of both series at Fontana. I don't know how you ask for a better weekend than that. And oh, by the way, some kid named Kyle Larson actually won a race.
Kyle Larson coming alive this past Saturday afternoon at Auto Club Speedway, taking down the win over Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, beating out 2 of the best that not only the Nationwide Series has to offer, but 2 of the best that the Sprint Cup Series has to offer. With that, the racing at Auto Club Speedway was the best we've seen in the past couple of years, at least at that track, and it just was 3 and 4 wide for various parts. The restarts were crazy. I say don't repave the place. It put on such a good race. The bumps in the backstretch cut down some tires. Some tire problems at the end of yesterday's race, but Jacob, just an overall fantastic weekend of racing at Auto Club Speedway, and a lot of people went into the weekend saying that it could be one of those dull races. It was not. It lived up to what it should have, and it was just one of the best ones probably we'll see throughout 2014 season.
I tend to agree with you, and I want to turn back to Tom on this because I know we watched this Cup race on Sunday, and there were several people that said it reminded them of the Brickyard 400 2008 edition with all the tire problems. Tom, I know how much these drivers say they hate the repaves, and these Cup tires did take a couple of guys out of contention to win the event because you had Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon, who both had tire issues late. Clint Boyer, who was running towards the front of the field. It was just a wild afternoon, and the question becomes, what do? Do you have to repave this place, or do we just, learn that maybe we change the tire compound and let these guys race because they were 6 wide on the last restart?
Well, I don't claim to be an expert on track surfaces, so I don't know that I'm qualified to judge whether or not we have to repave, but I would suggest that some of the tire problems may have been caused by some liberties that some of the teams were taking with regard to their setups. But, certainly if there's an issue with the racetrack itself, and those that are in charge will know if that's the case, then they'll make the appropriate adjustments or, repairs. I don't know that you need to completely repave the track, but there again, I don't know that I'm qualified or any of us are qualified to judge that. I certainly hated seeing all the tire issues, and obviously, there are some bumps there that need to be accounted for, but I'm not sure what the solution is. And I think some of the tires, it almost appeared were the cause of some of the liberties the teams were taking with regard, especially the left rear tire issues that were happening. A lot of speculation about what was the cause of those, but I'm not going to rush to judgment about repaving the track. And I would almost hate to see that, though. From time to time, track surfaces do need to be repaved, and the consequence to that is that the first couple races after the repave usually aren't quite the quality that we're used to. Great racing all weekend long, really. I mean, it wasn't just yesterday, but Saturday as well. Some fantastic racing all throughout the weekend on that track for sure.
Yeah, it really was. So you see Kyle Larson take the win over a furious duel for second behind him between Harvick and Busch. And Kyle Larson's win important in more than one way, and I'll turn to our own Kyle for this one. Not only was it his first career Nationwide Series victory, Kyle, but it also snapped a 9 consecutive race winning streak for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Nationwide Series at Fontana. That organization has been so good, and Kyle Busch has been so good there over the years, but when it came down to crunch time, unlike at Bristol a year ago when he was able to hold off his younger counterpart for the victory, this time the roles were reversed, and Kyle Larson chased the younger Busch brother down, caught him, passed him, and held on to it.
And Jacob, we take a look back at the start of the race. Kyle Busch didn't make it through inspection prior to Saturday afternoon's race, so he had to start at the back of the field after he didn't get a qualifying lap down, and he tore through the field. I believe he passed, if I remember correctly, it was 15 cars on the first lap before the caution came out for Jamie Dick. After that, he got up in the top 5. Say lap 30, he was battling for the lead, and then Jacob, he kind of hung around inside the top 5 for various parts of the event, but when crunch time came, Kyle Busch got to the front, but Kyle Larson outdid him, and it really surprised me that he was able to do that, not only with Kyle Busch, but with Kevin Harvick as well, Jacob. That 42 was stout Saturday.
Yeah, he really was, and hats off to him for claiming that victory. And Tom, I'll turn back to you now. He almost made it 2 in a row. I didn't think he was going to be able to get back through the field in 9th place on that last restart. We knew with all the tire problems, everybody was going to have to take tires, and we knew it was going to be a myriad of strategies. You saw Landon Castle in that 40 car stay out on no tires, praying for something to happen behind him. Of course, that didn't pan out. You saw a couple guys with 2 tires, and it was ultimately the 4-tire guys who won, and Kyle Busch wins it. But boy, he needs to thank Kyle Larson for that push on the last lap, because without that shove down the back straightaway in the draft, I don't think Kyle Busch gets by to win that race, Tom. I think he has to settle. So Kyle and Kyle tag teaming it up. They get by on the inside lane, and boy, it was a fun race, though, between those 4 who we call a little bit of hot-headed drivers in our sport. Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Tony Stewart, and Kurt Busch. What a conglomerate there at the checkered flag.
Well, yes. 4 drivers who are not afraid to walk the razor's edge and, if need be, just jump off it. And Kyle Larson, again, I was not surprised at his Sunday performance at all. In fact, I posted on my Facebook wall, the Nationwide Series race was over on Saturday, that I thought his first Cup win would come real soon. And, a few people who... a few people had some other ideas about that and disagree with me, and boy, I was almost proven right on Sunday. He, next to the definition of wheelman in the dictionary, could be a picture of Kyle Larson, and he has really made a difference in the performance of that Target Chevrolet. And I got to tell you, having those 4 drivers up at the front of the field dicing for the win, if I were sitting in 5th place, I would have almost felt fairly good about my chances. But it was a terrific finish. And boy, when Kyle Larson decided to turn it up, he surely did. And he was just a whisker away from his first Cup victory and his first double at the same time.
Yeah, and how incredible would that have been? But Kyle Busch comes away with the victory, becomes the 5th different winner in 5 races this season. We talked about the problems of several guys throughout the day because of tire issues, etc. You saw Brad Keselowski finish 26th after 3 separate tire issues. You saw Kevin Harvick have a tire issue late in the race. That's his 3rd consecutive problem. You saw Jimmy Johnson out of the lead have a cut tire. He finishes 24th on the day, the second to last car on the lead lap. Tom, how about a point shakeup? Because now we've got a new points leader too, Carl Edwards.
Yeah, boy, and you know what? Carl provided a little bit of excitement there at the end with his late race spin there, but Carl, again, this is going to be one of those years, I think, where we're going to see a lot of different points leaders because, you've got these guys as they win races. Now their strategy for the rest of the season changes because they know if they win, for the most part, they're in. And so now you're going to start to see that some of these guys are going to take some chances. We've already seen it, take some risks. And, guys like Carl Edwards who are fighting desperately to get to that point, and who want to get more than one win are going to start creeping up there. And again, we saw the same with Landon Castle. He had nothing to lose. I thought that was a great call by his crew chief to keep him up there in the top 3 and just to take a chance and see if they could shake something good out of the trees there. But unfortunately, it didn't work out in their favor. But I think you're going to see a lot of that type of madness, frankly, going on throughout these races this year. And it really does make it interesting. And there are some guys that are starting to show some promise. Certainly, Kevin Harvick's already got a win. And he has been fast pretty consistently. You saw the Roush cars last week. This week, even Sam Hornish filling in for Denny Hamlin had a great drive in that race. And so, you're just seeing some different names mixing it up at the front of the field here. And I like that. And it's really making it much more interesting to sit there and watch on Sundays so far.
Yeah, it really is. And we'll talk more about some of the fallout from the Fontana events a little bit later on in the show. We'll catch up on Denny Hamlin. We'll catch up on some more NASCAR news and notes. But for right this second, we're going to take our first caution flag of the night. And when we come back, we're going to have the first of our featured interviews from tonight's broadcast. We're going to hear from young Andretti Autosport pilot in the Pro Mazda division, Garrett Grist, as he prepares to kick off the 2014 season this weekend with Andretti Autosport at St. Petersburg during the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg weekend. That's coming up right after this. But for now, these messages. You're listening to Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. We will be right back.
Packers,
Vikings,
Red State,
Blue State.
We come from different places.
Uptown,
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
half empty,
Half full.
But no matter how different we are, we're all connected, and we can all make a difference. That's why United Way brings people, expertise, and resources together to improve the education, income, and health of our communities, the building blocks for a better life. When we live united, our efforts, magnified by others, add up to real change. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly, so do our communities. But real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So let's look beyond our differences.
Live united.
One by one, let's make a difference. Let's reach out a hand to one and influence the condition of all.
Live united.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker,
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio.
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and Kyle Souza around tonight's round table as we hash out all the latest news, views, and interviews from around the world of motorsports. And Tom, to start our next segment here, we're going to move away from the NASCAR world for just a little bit. We'll get back there a little later in the program tonight, but we're going to hear from one of our featured interviews that I had the chance to take from a couple of days ago that I'm really excited about some of the talent coming up through the Mazda Road to Indy for 2014. And, you know, I know Joel Sebastianelli would agree with me that this year's talent pool is much larger than it has been the last couple of seasons, and Andretti Autosport really evidencing that. We're going to hear from young Garrett Grist, who's just finishing up his last semester of high school, is running in the Pro Mazda class for Andretti Autosport here in 2014, and had a really strong season last year, picked up a win in USF 2000, moving up to Pro Mazda this year, but they're really excited about this new season. They're working very closely with some of the engineers from Matthew Brabham's team last year, and we know what kind of success Brabham had in the Pro Mazda ranks en route to that championship. So I know a lot of excitement around that Andretti Autosports team, and Garrett, a young man with, I think, a lot of potential for this year.
Well, I agree with you. And of course, for those who aren't familiar with Garrett, he is like many of the other drivers who pursue that type of a motorsports discipline. He came from what we call the short course go-kart road racing series, pardon me, the Manufacturers Cup type karting, where they run road courses that are generally shorter. They're not the 3-mile endurance type road courses. They're generally a mile or less, and it's sprint karting, and really a challenging form of racing. And Garrett was not planning to actually move up this year, but Andretti Autosport did away with, I guess, their F2000 program, so Garrett had the opportunity to move up to the Pro Mazda series, and so, yeah, he and Matthew Brabham, I know, have been working very closely, and, you know, we talked with Matty on an earlier show here, and boy, they have just assembled some really good young talent over at Andretti Autosport for sure, with Garrett and Matty and Zach Veach, and of course Shelby Blackstock, a little bit older, but certainly still very talented. And it's got to be a fun time to be around the Andretti shop, because there definitely is going to be some progress from these drivers. I believe in the next year or two, you'll see Zach moving up to the big IndyCar series, I'm sure, in the next couple of seasons at some point. And, Matty and Garrett look like they're not going to be far behind, and Shelby as well. So certainly just a lot of talent there. And Jacob, I know that you had a chance to talk with Garrett. Let's check that out.
Jacob Seelman for Speed77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com, sitting down for a special featured interview this afternoon with 2014 Pro Mazda driver for Andretti Autosport, Garrett Grist. Garrett, first off, thank you for taking some time to talk with us this afternoon. And I know a little bit of a quick move up the ranks for you with the Andretti Autosport team here in 2014. You ran your rookie season in the USF 2000 last year, grabbed a win, grabbed a pole, really had a solid season en route to the Rookie of the Year title. Talk a little bit about what the last couple months have been like for you, because I know it's been a really quick rise through the rungs of the ladder on the road to Indy.
Yeah, for sure. I'd just like to start off by saying thank you for having me on. I didn't plan on doing Pro Mazda this year. The plan was to do 2 years of USF 2000, but with Andretti getting rid of the USF 2000 program, I wanted to be able to stay in the Andretti family, and the opportunity came up for me to move up into the Pro Mazda, the program Matt had last year, and I couldn't say no to that.
You've run a lot of the Formula program as far as getting ready to move up through the open wheel ladder to eventually, I know, get to Indy Lights and the IndyCar Series. Talk a little bit about your history and your background in open wheel racing and how you've gotten to where you are right now with the Andretti team.
Well, first off, even before I got into the cars, I started off in go-karts. I did go-karts for 10 or 11 years, and then I did 2 years of Formula 1600, Formula Ford, and then last year, like you said, USF 2000 with Andretti, and now this year Pro Mazda. But open wheel's definitely been my passion all along, and to have the opportunity to race for Andretti is just incredible.
You've got some very, very impressive teammates working alongside you in the Andretti program. You mentioned Matthew Brabham, whose team you're really taking over this year in the Pro Mazda ranks. Younger guys like yourself, like Zach Veach, some of the guys who are trying to make it up the ladder just like you are. What's it been like working with some of those guys and learning from some of those guys in the Andretti squad over the last year or so? And what have you been able to take from your time with the teams and with your teammates?
Well, it's been great. I've learned a lot from Matt Brabham, and also with that, his dad's helped me too over the past year or two, especially at Winterfest. He was in the trailer helping me out. But it's just great, going into a race weekend, I have Matt's video from last year, and I have Matt's data, so I know all my marks and what I need to hit before the weekend even starts. So you can get up to speed a lot quicker with that, and also if I'm struggling, my engineer Yancey, who was Matt's engineer, we can go back and we can look at the data and see how I can improve and how I can get better as a driver.
Looking back at 2013, I know you had some very impressive moments throughout the season, but I know one of the highlights for you was the weekend at Lucas Oil Raceway during the weekend of the Indy 500, where you had a really strong second-place run. Talk a little bit about your 2013 season and really what stuck out to you from last year running USF 2000.
Well, yeah, 2013 was, I think, better than we anticipated. We only got one win, but realistically, we should have had at least 3 or 4. We were leading at Mid-Ohio in the wet, or sorry, not leading. We were passing for the lead, and drive shaft broke. I drove off in second place at Mid-Ohio. So that weekend, we could have done the triple that weekend, but just mistake by me and a car failure only led us with one win that weekend. Lucas Oil was great. I think with halfway to go, I was 8th place and stormed up through the field to second and almost got the pass done last lap, last corner. But, I was worried if I went in too deep, I'd wreck both of us, and I didn't want to do that. But yeah, it was a great season. I learned a lot. The Andretti guys were great. And, I think it's set me up well for this year.
I know it's not what you anticipated doing running Pro Mazda for 2014, but knowing the kind of equipment and the kind of people you've got surrounding you for this year, where do you guys set the bar and the expectations for 2014, knowing how close you came to so much more and how much you did accomplish last year?
Well, we finished Winterfest, as you know, and we won our first Pro Mazda race in our second ever time out. So that definitely, I think, changed the team's view a bit. Now then, they're like, oh, okay, well, we're going for the championship for sure. But for me personally, it's just I just want to keep learning. I want to keep getting better as a driver, and make tiny improvements here and there to the car. But I think overall we'll be contesting for wins. I'm not sure yet if I think we're going to be able to win the championship. Ask me maybe in a month or two. But yeah, we certainly have a car to do it. I just need to learn more about the car and get better, and we'll have a chance at the championship.
You're the only driver right now in the Andretti stable that is still finishing school. You're the youngest driver on the team right now. How's it been for you the last couple years balancing the rest of your education with your racing career, which has really taken off here over the last year or so?
Yeah, with school, like you said, I'm still finishing school. I'm in high school, my final year. The last two years of high school, I was on a part-time athletic program, so usually you do 4 classes a semester. I only did 2, so I did half the course load. So my grade 12 instead of 1 year is 2 years, so I'm just finishing that off now. But, before I started the part-time, it was definitely tough trying to handle school and racing. School suffered a bit with me missing close to 40 days a semester. So my principal came up with the idea of me doing the part-time, and that really helped for sure. My grades got better. I was able to focus more on racing, but also get my schoolwork done that I needed. So that was a great help and a great idea by her.
And I know looking forward to 2014, obviously, you guys don't want to set the expectations too high, but very optimistic, I know, about the beginning of 2014. Off track, though, as well, you've done a lot of work in the community over the last couple years. I know one of your major support causes is the Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. Talk a little bit about some of the work you've done with the hospital over the last couple years and really what it's meant to you to give back to the community.
It's great for me to be in the position I am and be able to start giving back already. I know a lot of the IndyCar guys do it, but to be in the road to Indy and be able to give back is great. In the last 3 years, we've done a special helmet. So last year we did it at the Toronto Indy. We got all the Andretti Autosport drivers to sign it, and then we auctioned it off for charity to raise money for sick kids, and we've done that 3 years in a row, and it's just great. The kids designed the helmets. 1 year, I think it must have been all little girls in the hospital at that time because there's caterpillars and butterflies and bunnies all over the helmet. It's just really cool to see them get involved and give them something to do.
And I know you can't do it alone, Garrett. I know you got a lot of people and supporters behind you, some of whom you've already mentioned, but a lot of people that help make it happen. So I'm going to let you give some shout-outs. Talk a little bit about who makes it happen for Garrett Christ.
For sure. Well, I'd like to start off with Lander Property Management. My aunt owns that company, and without her, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. She's a big supporter of me. Da Vinci Foods, which is a pizza company out of Montreal. Safina Foods, Bell Helmets, Sparco, and of course my family. Without my family supporting me, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
And I know looking forward to a strong 2014 run as you chase Rookie of the Year honors in the Pro Mazda division. Garrett, we appreciate you again taking some time to talk with us this afternoon. Wish you and the Andretti Autosport team all the best as you head down the 2014 season, and look forward to having you back on as the season progresses, hopefully with some wins for you guys along the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on, and I look forward to being on here again.
And Tom, before we go to commercial, certainly a lot of pride in that Andretti Autosport camp on their young talent, and I know a little bit later on in the show we're going to hear from another one of those young talents. We mentioned him already, Shelby Blackstock. Looking forward to continuing to tell the tale of Andretti's Pro Mazda camp this season. But Garrett, one of those young men who it may have taken him a little bit longer to get where he is right now than some of the other guys on the Andretti squad, but proven he's got every bit as much potential as the rest of them there.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, it's interesting too. You'll hear Shelby talk a little bit about Garrett, and it's interesting, the dynamic that exists, and I think it's a really fun dynamic, and one that bears watching. Shelby a little older than Garrett, but nonetheless, I think everybody in that camp just gets along really well, and they're all very marketable, and they're all very talented behind the wheel, and I think that Michael Andretti has done such a great job with his whole development process with these kids, and I think, we're seeing that with Zach Veach as time goes on here. We're seeing Zach mature, and, both on the track and off the track, these kids are being given all of the tools, whether it comes to, trainers and nutritionists or, just the equipment itself. And none of these developmental series on that open wheel side on the Mazda Road to Indy are easy series to compete in, to be sure. And so, if you're successful in those series, you've earned your stripes. So Garrett really has shown tremendous talent, and I was real impressed with how well spoken he was, and with Shelby as well. When we get to him a little bit later, but definitely looking for big things out of that organization this year, and very thankful that we've been able to get to know all of the racers a bit, and thankful to Veronica Knowlton, who is one of the PR people for Andretti, who's done such a nice job with us and being able to get us in touch with these young racers. So we're thankful that we're building that relationship, and look forward to continuing it as the year goes on.
And with that, we are going to take a commercial break and a caution flag here on Motorsports Madness. And when we come back, we're going to continue with the open wheel theme, although this time we're going to take it a little bit deeper. We're going to pull up the wine and cheese and sit down here around the round table and hear from our resident open wheel expert and fancy food artist, if you will. Joel Sebastianelli joins us to talk everything from F1 and Indy cars as we get set for the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg and the Malaysian Grand Prix this weekend. All that coming up next here on the Madness. You're listening to Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online, and we'll be right back.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
For every turn, a twist. For every start, an untimely finish. For every win, someone who loses it. For every number, a nation. For every celebration, a brawl. For every split second, years of work. For every heaven, a hell. For every good old boy, a good old girl. For every curse, a prayer. For every ounce of order, a jug of chaos. For every twist, there's a turn.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online, and we move into Open Wheel Central with our resident wine and cheeser, Joel Sebastianelli, back at the roundtable with us. Joel, certainly a very action-packed weekend of motorsports coming up on the open wheel side this weekend. We've got the F1 guys back at it for the Malaysian Grand Prix. We've got the Verizon IndyCar Series this weekend making the season debut at St. Petersburg. Everything really starting to heat up here at the end of the month of March, and couldn't be more excited to see these guys on track this weekend, especially in St. Petersburg, where I think the Verizon IndyCar Series is going to be very, very interesting this weekend.
Definitely a lot of unknowns. It's funny when you look at St. Petersburg and the Firestone Grand Prix. When you go back through their history, that event first started in 2003. They skipped 2004. It wasn't a race there then, but in the 10 years they've won the event, the only driver who has won more than once is Helio Castroneves, who's won it 3 times. It tends to be a very wide-open event every single year. So the weather is always beautiful. It's a great location. And with the parity, the way it is in the IndyCar Series, I think it's a fantastic place for the series to get their year kicked off every single year.
Looking at 2014, we're going into a season that is going to offer some big change for the IndyCar Series. A new title sponsor, some changes to the point system that we'll talk about in just a moment, but some of the numbers for this season, you've got, as you mentioned, Castroneves with 3 victories. You've got 10 different race winners from 2013, and even with only 17, 18 races this year, the parity that we've seen over the last year or so, you'd think we could maybe match that this year, and 13 times the winner of the St. Petersburg Grand Prix has gone on to win the series title, most recently Dario Franchitti in 2011 accomplishing that feat. Joel, looking at this weekend, who would you eye as the favorite? And I know we can't necessarily eye a favorite for the championship based on this race in St. Petersburg, but certainly the season opener, if you're strong out of the gate, you usually are strong for the better part of the season.
That does tend to be the way that it works. This year, you mentioned the point, there's going to be a lot more emphasis put on those 500-mile ovals, but we can get into that a little bit later. As far as what this race in St. Petersburg holds, it definitely is a good barometer for just how strong you're going to be, because St. Petersburg is, as much as there's parity in driving, and you don't know what things are going to be like, St. Petersburg is very representative of most of the road courses on the IndyCar Series. It is a street circuit. You've got numerous street circuits that you're going to be racing on throughout the course of the season. The turnstiles are very similar, very narrow in certain parts, not a lot of changes in elevation. Of course, Barber Motorsports Park is a permanent facility, as is Sonoma, so you would exclude those. But when you look at, let's see, Exhibition Place in Toronto is one that's just like St. Petersburg in a lot of ways. Reliant Park in Houston is very similar. Detroit and Belle Isle, you've got a lot of similarities there. And, of course, a lot of similarities when we move on to the second round of the season, second week of April, for the streets of Long Beach. They all are very similar in a lot of ways to St. Petersburg. So if you can race strong here, and you've got a good setup at St. Petersburg, it's going to mean good things for the rest of the road courses, especially the street circuits, for your season as well.
So if we're eyeing the favorites, obviously we know Castroneves has to come into St. Petersburg as the perennial favorite, being a 3-time winner. Who do you look at this weekend, Joel, as one of the favorites or a driver that you expect to run strong and contend for the victory this weekend, excluding Castroneves?
Well, Will Power is always very strong here. He's strong on any circuit where he gets to turn right, so definitely Will Power will be one to watch out for. He also won this race back in 2010. You mentioned Helio in 06, 07, and 2012. He's always got to be another one. I don't think we'll see drivers like Juan Pablo Montoya quite ready yet. I think Montoya is going to have a little bit of things to work out as the season goes on, and I suspect once we get to Indianapolis is when he'll start being much more competitive. Another driver that I think to look out for, too, is Sebastian Bourdais. We've seen the 11 kV Racing Technology car last season have some success with Tony Kanaan, but they weren't always running up front as much as they'd like to. I think they're going to be much stronger on the road courses this year, and maybe Sebastian Bourdais is someone that, in this first race of the season, that could take some people by surprise.
I love how we get through this entire list, and yet you don't even mention the guy who won this race a year ago, though, the Canadian Terror himself, James Hinchcliffe.
Well, it certainly has nothing to do with him not being on the list. Of course, it was his first victory of his career in 2013 when he won at St. Petersburg. So, look, I could go right down the line and name a bunch of guys. I mean, Marco, anyone in the Andretti Autosport team is always going to be a contender. Even Carlos Munoz right off the bat, I'd expect to see him start running up front. Scott Dixon, Ryan Briscoe has run well at St. Petersburg before. There's just so many guys to mention. You mentioned all the different race winners that we had last season. This season, I would just expect more of the same thing from last year. And if you name 20 guys in IndyCar, I mean, there's a very good chance that all of those people are going to have a chance to win any given race. So any given Sunday no longer just applies to football. It applies to the IndyCar series, too. And it's all for the better. It makes for a great fan experience. You never know quite what's going to happen. Just best to sit back, watch, and enjoy the ride.
So basically what you're saying is all we know is that we don't know.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And for different reasons that we don't know in Formula One. In Formula One, we don't know because of the mechanical unreliability of so many of these cars. You've got so many factors at play and so many different rules changes. As far as IndyCar goes, it's not so much mechanical unreliability, but I think the status quo from last year will still be pretty similar, and that's just that there are so many guys who are in contention and able to win. Starting up front is always a good thing, though, and I think that once we get through qualifying, we're going to have a much better idea of who's going to be up front and competing in this race, because one thing to note about St. Petersburg is that the drivers who start at the back typically don't make their way to the front. Now, that's true to a lot of road courses, but not always the way it's true in St. Petersburg. Drivers tend to get up front and lead a lot of laps, especially if they start up on the pole. So not that this is really going out on much of a limb, but if you qualify well, expect those drivers to compete well and be in competition for a podium or a victory.
All right, before we get to a look at this weekend's Malaysian Grand Prix for Formula One, let's take a look at the new points announcements that were released last week for the Rise in IndyCar Series. You alluded to it a little bit ago. Double points for this year's 500-mile events at Indianapolis, Fontana, and at Pocono. And also a little bit of a change to the manufacturers contest as well for this year. The 10-spot grid penalty going to be eliminated for these teams. Instead, it's going to be a manufacturer's points penalty if they have to replace one of those engines before the mileage threshold this year, Joel. How do some of these new points structures for 2014 change the look of the series and how these guys are going to race?
Well, for the manufacturers, definitely there's money at stake. There's bragging rights. It's good for them to win, but I think in the whole scope of things, a lot of fans don't really care about those points in the battle between Chevrolet and Honda. So at least in that extent, I'm not really sure that makes too big a difference. Maybe you'll see teams worrying about that a little bit more, though, because it matters much more to the manufacturers and to those internally in the sport than those externally who follow it just on a fan's basis. As far as double points go, I ranted and raved about how much I hated it for Formula One, but I really like it for IndyCar because I think it makes sense here. Fans are very accustomed to having ovals in IndyCar, and they've gotten away from that, and they've gone much closer to the champ car way of things, which you've got a lot more road courses and street courses now. I think by adding double points for these races, they become certainly three of the most important races on the calendar. The Indianapolis 500 always was one of those anyway. But these are the Triple Crown races. They're the 500-mile races. And because those are the only three 500-mile races, and they're the three big ones on the ovals, I just think it makes more sense. It's not just manufacturing drama for the sake of manufacturing drama at the end of the season, the way Formula One is doing it with double points in Abu Dhabi. Here, there seems to be much more of a concrete criterion for why these points will be awarded as such. I like it, I think it works, and it makes the balance of power between points available on road courses and points available on ovals very similar. Just about 100 points separating the two now for the maximum possible points you could attain. So, if you're a great oval racer, for example, like Ed Carpenter, who I know is not running a full season, but let's just say he was. It makes Ed Carpenter a little bit more competitive in the whole scope of things, even if he can't finish well on the road courses, because the way the points are essentially balancing now, if you did single points for all, but it would be adding 3 more oval races, and it would make it at least experientially, you've got the same amount of ovals and the same amount of road courses. So the big winners here are the oval drivers who aren't really accustomed to performing well on the road courses. I like it. I could certainly do without it, but I think it works for what IndyCar's trying to do here, and I certainly don't have a problem with it.
All right, let's move away from the IndyCar side of things and look at Formula One for just a minute, Joel, because after we saw an incredible race a couple weeks ago in Australia, now we move to the Malaysian Grand Prix for round 2 of the Formula One World Championship. Obviously, there's still a lot to be determined, certainly, but we do know that Mercedes is looking as strong as you and I both anticipated they were going to for this season. What do we look for going into Malaysia, and do we peg the Silver Arrows as the favorites once again?
I think you should. Looking back at the Malaysian Grand Prix history, the drivers who have won all the races dating from really about the mid-2000s up to now, Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso have been the best here. But those guys haven't really shown they're ready to compete for a victory yet, although Red Bull did have a second-place finish that was ultimately stripped 2 weeks ago in Australia, with Daniel Ricciardo making the podium in his first race with RBR. So when you look a little bit further down the field, the only drivers competitive on a consistent basis inside the top 10 that are still around are Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. So those two, just by virtue of the fact that they seem to be the best of the rest at Malaysia, even if neither of them have actually broken through and pulled off a race victory at the Sepang International Circuit, I think that they're definitely still the favorites, both based on how reliable their car has been. Say for Lewis Hamilton's, which has certainly had some trouble in Melbourne. They're the most reliable machinery and drivers heading into this. So I wouldn't be surprised to see either of the two of them definitely coming into the favorites and finishing on the podium. Very important race for Lewis Hamilton. He's got to get some points out of this. You don't want to retire twice in a row and then have that gap to make up, not just to the rest of the field, but to your own teammate. There's still a lot to be sorted out, though, and I think we learned nothing in Australia. I don't think there's that much that we really learned. I think this is going to be another race where it's just going to be a complete toss-up, and if I was a betting man, I certainly wouldn't want to bet on this race. I think once we get to the European round of the championship in May, once we head to Spain, 3 races from now, I think that we're going to have a lot more questions answered, and we'll have a status quo, if you will, for the way the rest of the season is going to go. I don't think we're there yet, and we're going to see a lot more of what we saw in Melbourne. Just a lot of mechanical failures, a lot of confusion, and a lot of guys just leaving the Grand Prix weekend scratching their heads wondering where they went wrong.
Let's shift back to the American side of the boat now for a minute, back to the IndyCar world for the last couple of items here. I know the first thing that really caught you off guard earlier this week, but you weren't at all disappointed by the announcement, was the fact that Ed Carpenter and Ed Carpenter Racing announced that they were going to be fielding a second car for the Indianapolis 500 to help fill out that field a little bit more, and we're going to see J.R. Hildebrand, who of course came within a gasp of winning the 2011 Indianapolis 500 behind the wheel of the number 21 Chevrolet for the Indianapolis 500. We know how good he is at Indianapolis. He's not always been impressive everywhere else, Joel, but I think for Ed Carpenter, a good hire and somebody who can contend at least in the Indianapolis 500.
I think so, too. I think it's a nice move by Ed Carpenter Racing, and it certainly brings us closer to filling up the field of 33, which at this point I'd say my calculations would have it somewhere around 32. For at least the number of drivers I could expect that will definitely be in, and the number of teams that will for sure field one. Of course, there's always teams that come out of the woodwork, so having Ed Carpenter Racing add one more means we're definitely a lot closer to achieving the goal of filling the field and possibly having some extra cars to bump as well on Saturday. I don't really get too excited about J.R. Hildebrand as a driver throughout the rest of his career. His record looks a little bit better than I think a lot of fans remember. Unfortunately, he gets remembered for crashing out on the final course of the Indianapolis 500 while leading and finishing second, which is still the best finish of his IndyCar career. But in 2012 with Panther, I mean, it's a guy who definitely scored some top 10 finishes. I even scored a couple top 5s as well at Long Beach and Texas. A well-rounded driver who's finished well on both ovals and on road courses. Maybe a little bit better by the numbers than he gets credit for when we look back and think of what he's famous for. I mean, unfortunately for this guy, unless he ever wins again, he's always going to be known as the guy who crashed out in the far corner of the Indy 500. The racing definition of a choke. And it's maybe not fair to him. He's still 26 years old. If he gets a full-time ride, maybe he could surprise some people, pull off a victory, and it would be great to have another American face in the increasingly internationally dominant IndyCar series. But when it comes to racing, it gives you someone who can compete, put in some good lap times, and between Ed Carpenter and Jared Hildebrand, you've got two very good drivers on not just any oval, but at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Good hire by Ed Carpenter Racing, and it'll be nice to see a familiar face return to the IndyCar series.
And the last thing I have to chuckle at here, because it came out over the weekend, the stars of the IndyCar series were down in St. Petersburg for the annual media day, and of course they always do the media karting event every year where some of the IndyCar guys hop in the karts and take a spin around the kart complex down there, and had to chuckle when the IndyCar story came out over the weekend about little Sebastian Weldon, Dan Weldon's son, matching wits with Marco Andretti and looking him in the eye and asking him for a race, and they ended up putting Sebastian as the pace kart driver for the event, but all the guys said they loved his enthusiasm, and they think, based on what they've seen of him behind the kart against some of the younger competitors his own age, that he's got all his father's talent, and just, one of the really cool stories of the weekend. You got to enjoy it, and it's nice to see that the Weldon family name obviously not lost to anybody in the IndyCar paddock.
Yeah, it is a cool story. Makes for a cool photo, too, seeing little Sebastian flying down the front stretch with the rest of the IndyCar series celebrities in tow. He actually has his first kart race coming up early next month in South Carolina, and his mother says he's just like his father, wants everything to be perfect, really wants to race. I guess it just comes in your blood a lot of times. A really cool story, and you certainly wish the best for him, and it's nice to see that after the tragedy that occurred in 2011, that the Weldon family is still being taken care of in the sport, that there's still people who are remembering them, and not just that they're being remembered, but they still have an active presence in the sport. Speaking at the St. Petersburg Grand Prix every single year. The drivers all sharing words with Sebastian Weldon. It's nice to see the Weldon name still around the sport, even after Dan Weldon tragically lost his life in Las Vegas a few years ago.
And Joel, we know we'll have you back on next week to recap all the action from both St. Petersburg and Malaysia. As you always say, it's the most wonderful time of the year, and certainly this one of the most wonderful weekends of the year for all of open wheel racing, kicking the IndyCar series off and really hoping we can learn a little bit more on the Formula One side as well. So looking forward to watching all the action this weekend, and we know you'll have it for us.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy the weekend. Open wheel racing. Finally, now we can say it was in half swing with Formula One back in Australia, but this season it's now in full swing. The 2004 racing season is finally fully 100% underway. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's finally arrived. Whatever racing you may be watching this weekend, be sure to enjoy it.
And with that, we'll take a break here on Motorsports Madness. When we come back, the action continues as we continue our jaunt all around the motorsports world. We'll be back after these words to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online.
So, you want to be eco-friendly?
Of course.
Okay, got corn?
We got that.
Got someone to blend it into fuel?
Got it.
Got a car to use that fuel?
Sure do.
Got a way to recycle?
Yep.
Got trees to offset carbon?
Got that.
Got sun to power the track?
You bet.
Got electric-powered pace cars?
Yep.
So wait a minute. You cut emissions by 20%, you're the largest recycler in sports, and you got a solar-powered track.
Got all that.
All right. Got a cool earthy logo?
Check this out.
Too cool. Better.
Maybe you know who we are.
But do you know who we really are?
We're ladies.
And not so gentlemen.
We're a mad scientist.
We're outlaws turned heroes.
What a man! We're part athlete.
Part astronaut.
And all show off. We're a flash mob. We're bigger than most towns. We're everything
You never expect.
He slammed into the jet drop.
We're always testing the limits. And each other.
We're the unknown coming at you at 200 miles per hour.
We're fire. We're smoke.
Nerves colliding with steel.
We're the loudest party on earth.
We live at the corner of Mayhem and Maine. Oh no! They crossed the line, and guess who wins the race?
Where anything can happen. It usually does.
For Nationwide drivers, every race matters. They have everything to win and everything to lose. With every win, they're closer to winning the Nationwide title. With every loss, they're closer to losing it all. They're not just racing for points, they're racing for a future. And only a checkered flag separates obscurity from greatness. This is the Nationwide Series.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Let's get back at it, shall we? Welcome back, everyone, to Motorsports Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and Kyle Souza along for the ride here tonight at the round table. We'll have more of our cast of characters joining us shortly, but Tom, first thing I want to touch on here as we come back to the NASCAR side of things now is what we mentioned it earlier in our Fontana race recap that Sam Hornish Jr. was filling in for Denny Hamlin during Sunday's NASCAR Sprint Cup Series event. Hornish was already at the racetrack on standby for Matt Kenseth. The car just kind of got switched around a little bit on him, but Denny with a severe sinus infection that was reported by Joe Gibbs Racing to be affecting his vision, so he stepped out of the car. NASCAR undergoing some testing with him at a local hospital, and Denny going to undergo some more testing this week to find out if he'll be cleared to compete this weekend at the Martinsville Speedway. And I know Denny's hoping the answer to that is yes, because Martinsville's a track he's been so good at over the years. It's one of his two home tracks, that and Richmond. But, you know, a tough situation, and now all of a sudden this could compound Hamlin's chances of making the chase unless NASCAR invokes the magical EIRI clause.
Yeah, this will be interesting, actually, Jacob. I certainly don't want to pretend to know what's going through NASCAR's mind about this, but EIRI, except in rare instances, for those of you who are not good at translating acronyms, and I would think that perhaps this might be one of those rare instances when NASCAR looks at the situation and says, look, they brought the car, Denny was ready to race, he got sick, became medically unable to race, they put the car in the race with another driver. You know, if it would seem to me that if there were ever an instance where that clause should be invoked and could be justified in being invoked, this would be it. And it would be a shame if Hamlin's chances for racing for the championship went out the window simply because, of an illness that, that was not of his own making, obviously.
Very true, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how all that shakes out. And Tom, a little bit of breaking news as well. And Kyle, actually, I'm going to start with you on this because you were the one that brought it to our attention. Via MRN Radio reports that Turner Scott Motorsports is going to use one of their part-time trucks this season to put Ben Rhodes behind the wheel of a NASCAR Camping World truck at some point in 2014. Not a ton of details yet on a potential schedule or anything like that. We know he can only run the short tracks, the road courses, etc., Kyle, but this kid just got off winning the K&M Pro Series East race at Greenville over the weekend. Now, all of a sudden, the truck deal comes in, and you've got a snowball of momentum for Ben Rhodes.
Yeah, Ben Rhodes has been coming on strong in basically anything he's been in, and this afternoon, first reported by the Motor Racing Network, Ben going to be competing with Turner Scott in what is supposed to be 5 Camping World Truck Series races over this season. Jacob, you mentioned that we're not necessarily sure exactly what races that'll be, but he has to run one of the short tracks or those road courses, so that'll be interesting to see where they throw him in. Of course, Ben coming off a K&N Pro Series East win a little bit ago, and he's just been one of the biggest up and rising stars that's come about in the NASCAR ranks, and it's going to be good to see him behind the wheel of a truck. We've seen in the past that these youngsters get into the truck series and they make a statement right away, and then they start rising up to the nationwide and eventually the Sprint Cup Series. Hopefully this is the same thing for Ben. But Tom, I'll throw it to you. What's your opinion on this? Ben's been strong in the other series, and basically anything he's been in, getting himself a truck ride now. Hopefully he'll be doing good in that over the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, see, this is what happens when drivers appear on our shows. Ben was just on our show last week, guys, and here he is. Now he gets a truck ride. So you see what we do for drivers? No, it's that's great news, and we will actually be having Brandon Jones from the Turner Scott stable as one of our featured guests this Thursday on our sister show, the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Report. That got that confirmation today that Brandon will be available to us, and so we're going to be talking with him for sure and hoping to be able to get Ben again and talk with him about the latest developments here with regards to the truck. I think Ben is going to do just fine. He's shown the talent, and he has matured just so much as a racer since I started watching him back in the days of dirt go-karts, and so I think it's great to see. And it's going to be fun to watch him take that step into the truck series and see how he does up there. But I don't know, Jacob. I think this is a golden opportunity for him, and I think he's going to take the ball and run with it very nicely.
Yeah, I really, really agree with you on that, and I think it's a big deal for Ben to have this opportunity. As Kyle said, looking like it's going to be 5 truck races. Boy, Tom, I didn't think about this, but one of those 10 or 11 truck races that he's eligible to run is actually at Eldora. Don't know if they're going to throw him to the wolves like that, but wouldn't it be fun to see this kid, who we know is a wheelman, wheel it around on the dirt?
Well, hadn't thought about that, but sure. That certainly does play to Ben's experience base, though he hasn't done it in a big car, as far as I know. But I think it's going to be great that we could see Ben at some point on the dirt, and I think it's going to be great that we could certainly see Ben full time in the truck series, perhaps as early as 2015. Kyle, I know you want to follow up too.
Yeah, Tom, as I break some news here that Turner Scott Motorsports has released on their website, as I'm reading it right now, the 5 races that he's going to be competing in, we actually have them. Roads will be under the direction of 3-time NASCAR Camping World Truck Series championship winning crew chief Mike Hillman Jr. throughout these 5 races. Hillman directed truck number 4 last year, and now we are set for the following 5, which will begin this weekend at Martinsville Speedway, March 29th. He's going to jump behind the wheel. He'll follow that up with a race in May at Dover International Speedway, the August Bristol Wednesday night race for the trucks, the Martinsville race in the fall on October 25th, and he will do that on 11/7 at Phoenix International Raceway, the final second to last race for the trucks. So, Rhodes will make his debut, as I mentioned, this Saturday at 2 Eastern on Fox Sports 1. This all coming out from Turner Scott Motorsports website this evening. He's behind truck number 32 for this weekend. So, once again, congratulations to Ben Rhodes. It should be interesting to see what he can do, especially starting this weekend. He'll be behind the wheel of that truck in Martinsville, and then he'll head off to Dover, Bristol, Martinsville again, and Phoenix.
Oh, boy. Talk about throwing a rookie to the wolves. Martinsville's not exactly an easy track to make your debut at either. Going to be very, very interesting. All right, though. We've got some more invaders coming in. So, Tom, I want to move to the next subject that we've got here on the docket, and that's the fact that reports released today from several sources and on Twitter, because I actually watched this conversation unfold a little bit this afternoon, but reports in talks between Dale Earnhardt Jr., some guy named Graham Rahal, and the National Guard, that we may be seeing another edition of what Tony Stewart liked to call ride swap a couple years ago at Watkins Glen. It's talking that maybe the National Guard wants to see Junior and Rahal swap rides on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway oval at some point. And from what I heard from both the drivers, they're really excited about it and would love to make it happen. Tom, Dale Jr. in an Indy car, say what?
Can you just picture old Dale Sr. up there in the Lord's kingdom looking down, looking at what's going on with this and just shaking his head going, boy, I never could keep you under control, could I? I mean, that's just, that's phenomenal. I would love to see Junior get into an Indy car, and I'd love to see Graham Rahal in a stock car, actually. I think Graham's a very talented young racer, and I know it's just for a test, if you will. But you know what? Who knows where that leads? And I'm a big proponent. I've made no bones about the fact that I love seeing the crossover that's going on with Kurt Busch at Indy this year, and I'd like to see more of it. And boy, that would be interesting to see Dale Jr. actually racing an Indy car at some point. But certainly that would probably be a very well-attended one-car test at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway if they opened it up to the public, which I'm sure they would. I'm sure that there would be a large number of fans that would be interested in watching that live. And how cool is it that, we have this Twitter deal going on now, Jacob, where you can actually sit and watch that conversation unfold live. That's pretty neat.
I love it. And, it's going to be fun to watch. Hey, Kurt Busch is doing the double this year. Why not see Dale Earnhardt Jr. do it? And I want to welcome the Turn 5 podcast crew back here to the round table. And I'm going to throw it to Stephen Ovens here in just a second. But before I do, I want to speculate. We've heard Graham Rahal make no bones about the fact that he wants to do this NASCAR thing, at least on a couple race basis at some point. He wants to run a stock car and be competitive, and Brickyard 400 weekend is a couple weeks before Mid-Ohio on the nationwide schedule, and I don't know, Tom, potential tune-up perhaps if Graham Rahal wants to run the race at his home road course? This could be fun, Tom.
Well. I would imagine that if Junior, if Graham Rahal is bringing National Guard with him, I can't believe Junior would have a problem with that. I'm sure they could find another Junior Motorsports car and the opportunity at some point to make that happen for Graham. And I'd like to see it too. I think that is just amazing that these two would have a Twitter conversation about that. And again, I think Graham's very talented, and of course, Bobby Rahal always did the IROC thing whenever the opportunity was there. And, I think it's healthy to see this interest in and curiosity in crossing over. I don't want to get too carried away with the excitement right now because, again, all it is a test, but it's just neat that the conversations are taking place, and I just think it's good for the sport in general, and it's good for the fans to see that these drivers are not being snobbish about their discipline of racing, that they're recognizing and respecting the other disciplines that are out there. And so, I think this could be very fun to watch, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I really tend to agree with you. Kyle, you've been kind of sitting back here in the shadows of the round table for a little bit. What you got on the whole Dale Jr., Graham Rahal, IndyCar Fender deal swap?
Well, if anybody hasn't, if you have Twitter and you haven't taken a look at the conversation, it went down last night, so you'll have to dig a little bit deeper into their Twitter accounts to find it. But I was actually sitting in bed last night on Twitter, and I found what was going on. And Junior went on to say that he was fully engaged and he was ready to try it. So hopefully, I'm hoping actually this goes down. Dale Jr. actually went on to ask Graham Rahal if how that IndyCar would handle Daytona. And Jr. actually went on to say he'd like to do it at Talladega, and he'd like to see what it could do. The IndyCar itself could do it at Daytona or Talladega. I don't think that'll happen. That might be a little bit too much speed. Jr. was on a tear last night. If you missed it on Twitter, he went out to eventually tag Richmond to see if Richmond was interested in it, and he also went on to tag Richmond to ask if Robert Griffin III, Redskins NFL quarterback, could be the Grand Marshal. So Junior was all over Twitter last night, but this Graham Rahal deal, I really hope it happens personally. This would be great to see. Junior hasn't really taken the realm out of the stock cars, at least in a while. And Tom, this would be great for not only NASCAR, but IndyCar, and I'm sure there'd be a lot of fans. As you mentioned, it's a one-car test, well, really two cars with the swap, but this would be interesting. The fans would probably stack this place just to watch this, even if it was only a 10-minute thing.
Robert Griffin III as Grand Marshal. Okay, see, this is what happens when you let Junior loose on Twitter. He just starts making things happen. You know, when Junior's done racing, he could probably make a pretty good promoter at the rate he's going.
Yeah, and you know what? The more that I read into Junior's Twitter, and if you haven't read Dale Jr.'s Twitter, he came on to Twitter, for those of you that are unfamiliar, the night of his Daytona 500 win back in February, and it's just been crazy right now about what he has been doing on Twitter, right? He spoke last night. His actual tweet to Richmond was, if you all don't have a Grand Marshal for the upcoming race, you should invite Robert Griffin III. He needs to come back and check NASCAR out. Well, Dennis Bickermeyer, and excuse me if the pronunciation was wrong on that, is the president of Richmond, and he actually came back to Junior and said they'd love to have him working with at least something at the race, and maybe he could wheel the pace car. So maybe not a Grand Marshal, but maybe he's driving the pace car. Jacob, I'm not really sure where this is going to go.
I'm not sure either, but RG3 as the Grand Marshal is almost as obscure as what the Cup Series did at Auto Club this weekend with the great Gonzo as the Grand Marshal. But, you know, while we're talking about sports dignitaries, here's one for you. Did anybody notice Tom Donovan McNabb on Jimmy Johnson's pit box this weekend? What happened to racers aren't athletes?
I actually heard about that this afternoon. And when I was riding back, I was at a meeting with the folks from County Line Raceway about our big race of the year for our ASCS Carolina Sprint Car Series that we're having in November. And I was riding back, and somebody actually called me and said, "Did you see Donovan McNabb on the pit box?" I almost crashed the car. I did not. I didn't know anything about that, and I thought that was just unbelievable to hear that Donovan was sitting up there. And Kyle, I think you have some more on that?
Yeah, well, Donovan McNabb actually took now that I'm reading more about it, now I'm digging through Dale Jr.'s Twitter, I'm digging through Quint Boyer's Twitter, and the more that I read, Quint Boyer actually took Donovan on a pace car ride at about 160 miles an hour yesterday morning at Auto Club Speedway. They went through the seams, the bumps, so McNabb got the actual effect of the speed, not the stock car itself, but the speed at Auto Club with the pace car, at least with Boyer behind the wheel. Now that I'm reading more into the Dale Jr. Robert Griffin thing, Robert Griffin came back on Twitter to say that he was game, and Junior and RIR have set this up, so it appears as if Robert Griffin is going to be driving the pace car for the April race that's coming up. So there's some breaking news for you as I'm reading up and down Twitter. Robert Griffin's going to drive the pace car at Richmond.
Oh boy, this is fun. This is fun, and you know, we turn one subject into about five in just a moment here, Tom. I guess that's how crazy our heads are. There's a reason we call this show The Madness.
Well, you know, you leave any one of us alone in a room long enough and we find something to break, and you put us all together and you just never know what's going to happen. It's actually kind of scary sometimes. But, you know, here again, Junior gets loose on Twitter, and look at all the material that comes out of it. I mean, this is the best thing that's probably ever happened to Twitter is Junior joining on. You know, I think this stuff's great, and I just really, I think that, again, the idea of Robert Griffin, who, you know, wow, what a neat deal, and just to have him get interested in racing as much as Junior is in the Redskins football team. I mean, just all these little dynamics are fun for the fans, and it just gives us something to talk about, besides all complaining about whatever NASCAR's done or is doing or whatever. It's all positive and it's all fun stuff, so I think it's great.
Hey, at least we're not complaining to Goodyear like I'm sure Tony Stewart and about half the field were. I mean, come on, we've seen Tony do that a time or 5, so at least we're not talking about tires. But want to welcome Stephen Evans and Clint Miller back up to the round table now. I know they've been listening in on a little bit of this conversation, and Stephen, you're the one that actually first alerted me to the whole Dale Jr. IndyCar ride swap potential scenario. So before we head to commercial right here, what's your opinion of this whole deal? I know you were really, really excited when you saw this.
Yes, sir. I'm jacked up. I don't know. I'm sure National Guard will have a lot to do with this seat swap with Junior. I'm all for it, and for what it's worth, I'd like to put some funds from the Turn 5 podcast toward making this seat swap happen.
See, there we go. We've already got our first contributor, and it comes right here live on the Madness. Again, we call it mad for a reason. We're all insane, but we're going to take a 15-second pause for station identification. And when we come back, we're going to talk dirt because Stephen and Clint and the rest of the gang's all here. We'll be right back after this.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to the Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, Kyle Souza, Stephen Evans, Clint Miller, all in the house now as we converge on the round table. And we're going to talk dirt now, get down and dirty with everything that has gone on over the weekend in motorsports. Tom, you and I will get to some two-wheel dirt action here in a minute in this segment, but I want to start with Stephen because we had a killer World of Outlaws STP Sprint Car show over the weekend at the Stockton Dirt Track. It is not often that we can say there was virtually a photo finish in a sprint car race, but there was virtually a photo finish in a sprint car race.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta tell you, we have not lacked for any excitement as far as the World of Outlaws STP Sprint Cars have gone for the last couple of weeks. And it really looked like a Donnie Schatz kind of race. He got the lead, with not very many left to go. I think it was less than 10 laps to go. And Kerry Madsen come up through there. And if you watch or listened in or watched the highlights that came out afterwards, you look at the move that Madsen tried to make with 2 to go, and it didn't look like he had enough momentum. And then here he comes on the last lap down through 3 and 4. Caught a lap car, but really, in the end, the lap car really didn't make that much a difference. And as far as power plants go, Kerry Madsen just flat out beat Schatz to the line just on horsepower. Got him right at the line as well. It was just a really exciting race. And I mean, these guys, as far as their scheduling has really built up some excitement this year. And Saturday night's race certainly didn't hurt matters as far as the sprint cars go.
No, it did not at all. How about the margin of victory? 0.117, just barely over a tenth of a second. And when you're talking 150 mile an hour, 900 plus horsepower sprint cars, I mean, it's just incredible how close it is. I believe it was just barely over half a car length at the checkered flag. Donnie Schatz said he didn't even realize Madsen was there till after the finish, and they told him he finished second, but that's just a sign of an incredible race. Staying on the Outlaws side of things for a minute, Stephen, a big announcement, and I know you guys are going to have some input on this, but another race added to the World of Outlaws STP Sprint Car schedule for 2014. In September, they're going to put dirt down on the pavement at Berlin Raceway in Michigan and turn the mighty sprint cars of the World of Outlaws loose on dirt, on pavement, but on dirt.
Yeah, And that's it's always exciting when they do that. I feel like the last time we've seen that happen was probably Bristol.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right, Stephen.
And of course, Bristol being more of a shorter track, I'm not quite as familiar with the configuration of Berlin. But I got to tell you, anytime you take dirt, you put it down on the racetrack, and I will say, I feel bad for the asphalt guys. I'm sure they're doing this toward the end of their season, because we know that after they put the dirt down at Bristol, those guys were kicking up some dirt and sand and all sorts of funny things there after that race. But just another great race added to the STP World of Outlaws STP Sprint Car schedule. Really got to hand it to Dirt Car and World Racing Group for putting together just a spectacular season so far. I really feel like these guys are really going all in with all of their touring series. And we're still waiting to hear a little bit more about what they're going to be providing as far as TV coverage later on in the season. But just from where we were a few years ago, to look at what they've done as far as promotion and getting this series back to where it needs to be, I, for one, Tom, have been really impressed with what they've been able to do.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, in all, I would have to say that I think this is probably the best I've seen from that series in quite a while. So I would definitely agree with you on that. And I love the idea of the whole dirt on Berlin. I was actually there once for a super modified race, and that track with dirt on it would be very, very interesting. And I think that's going to be a fun show for the fans and for the racers as well.
Of course it's going to be a fun show. It's dirt, but it's pavement, but it's dirt, Tom. You missed that whole discussion there for just a minute. But, the best part about this is I hope they televise this event, because you know what I'm going to do if they do? I'm going to kick back on my couch, get ready to watch some sprint car racing, and I'm going to find me some snacks, maybe not Tony Stewart-style snacks, because, I'm not a fan of them there soda cookies that we've been discussing here over the last couple breaks, but I got to find some snack food, and somebody needs to put this show on a movie theater screen, because this is going to be fun stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. And a couple things that we wanted to touch on while we were on with you guys tonight was we actually got a dirt race in up here in the Northeast. Somehow, down at the New Egypt Speedway down in New Jersey, they were able to get a 60-lap affair in down there. And Ryan Godown takes the first win of the dirt modified season. That was a Race of Champions dirt modified feature event down there. In a pretty stout field down there. Rick Lawbeck took second. Danny Johnson came home third, Matt Shepard fourth, and Stuart Friesen fifth. So we're starting to get some shows in up here, and just we're excited to have this racing gig back in town. We're actually headed off to a show this coming weekend that gets the racing landscape kicked off here in the Finger Lakes. We're going to be doing a show in front of a live audience out at the Finger Lakes Speed World show coming up this weekend. And we will be talking some pretty big news that happened up here in the Northeast. Dan Harpel, who will be familiar to a lot of Northeast drivers, the Harpel family, synonymous with the 5 Mile Point Speedway, Dan Harpel has taken over as the promoter of the Black Rock Speedway, which is a 4/10 dirt track that's closest to us here at the Casa de Pork Chop Studios. And this is really going to change the landscape of the dirt racing scene around our area. That's been on a little bit of a decline, and boy, it's got some buzz. And after we had all the discussion about the transaction with Rolling Wheels, which is still in process as we're finding out as the weeks go on, but for Dan to be taking over Black Rock Speedway, Clint, is really big, and we're going to be covering a lot of stuff for those guys.
Well, it's nice to have a story where dirt track gets sold and they're not going to put in a mini mall.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
It's going to a guy who's been a successful promoter in the past. He was actually Dundee Speedway, which is the old Black Rock Speedway. Dundee Speedway is the old name of the racetrack. He was promoter there in the late '80s. He was a promoter up to 5 Mile Point to 2003, so he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He handed the reins over to his brother. BlackRock actually had a Race of Champions race last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And he promoted that, so he knows what he's doing, and I'm really excited to see the
it's
new
coming
life.
back to a great family in the Harpel
Yes.
family, and I know Tom will remember the Harpel name from his days up here in the Northeast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Got to know Andy pretty well. Not so much Dan, just because he and I didn't cross paths as much, unfortunately, I would say, as Andy and I did. But know that both of them do a great job in their work, and, Dan's work in the past has been phenomenal. So, I'm happy to hear this, to be honest with you, and I think he's going to do wonders, Black Rock, to bring it, back and maybe even take it farther than it's been in the past. It definitely, I think, is going to benefit from Dan's knowledge and past success as a promoter for sure.
So, by the way, guys, just so you know, I am keeping count here, because I was listening when we were discussing the Berlin deal, and I heard Stephen and Clint have the same light bulb brain blast at the same time, and I heard Bristol. And, Tom, if we're contributing soda cookies to the potential of the Indianapolis test day, we need to steal some of those soda cookies and figure out how to divvy them up between Clint and Steven right there, because I almost said the word jinx right after they did it, but they moved on so fast and the light bulb kept right on blinking that it was like, no, wait, slow down.
Hey, soda cookies are good any time of the day. They just don't cooperate well with diets.
I'm not even going to go there. Stephen, Clint, I know we're excited to have a lot of your coverage coming out and hopefully get some more racing in on the northeast side of things here coming up. Looking at this weekend, the World of Outlaws headed to the Merced Speedway, and Sammy Swindell, a perfect 3 for 3 at that track over the last several visits that the Outlaws have paid there. 3 visits, 3 wins by Sammy. Looking at this weekend, what are the odds that he makes it 4 for 4 at the legendary Western Bull Ring, or is it finally time for somebody else to break through and claim a victory?
Well, I think somebody else is going to claim the victory. I'm a little perplexed, but maybe, I don't know, maybe not so much, I guess, in a polite way to say it. But Sammy's really struggling, and I don't know the reason for it, but he's really not close right now, and I don't think that he's gonna. I know, granted, he's had luck at this racetrack and he's won here, but I don't think that the Big Green Tree Stands #1 is anywhere near winning a race yet.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys that are strong this year. I mean, we saw 3 of the cars crash the other night, who are your top point guys, and Paul McMahon, Brad Sweet, and Darren Pittman. I mean, this is probably one of the more competitive seasons that we've seen from the World of Outlaws in years past. So, I'm gonna throw this guy's name out there because he picked up a win the other night. I think Kerry Madsen could really get on a roll here.
Ooh, interesting to see. And then, of course, on Saturday, we've got the Mini Gold Cup at Chico, California, the Silver Dollar Raceway. That race always exciting. You talk about Gold Cup and shiny things and big races, and I really hate that Kyle Larson's not available for this one because he's been on such a roll lately. Although, you know what? I'm going to have to look into that because it's the trucks in the Cup Series this weekend at Martinsville. Cup Series runs on Sunday, Tom. Kyle's always been good at Chico. He got his first ever World of Outlaws win there a couple years back. I could see him hopping a private jet to California to run a sprint car race and then hop back and run at Martinsville on Sunday. It's been done before.
I could see that happening. I'm not quite sure that Joe Gibbs may be as excited about it as probably the group of us are, but I could definitely see, I could see Kyle wanting to do it for sure.
Hey, Tom, you fumbled that one a little bit because it's not Joe Gibbs, it's Chip Ganassi. But anyways, I don't know if if he's going to be too excited about letting him fly across country, and then to come back to Martinsville. I just think that they've got too many eggs in the basket because, in my opinion, Kyle Larson's the guy to beat for the Rookie of the Year, and I don't think that they want to jeopardize that at all.
I've been known to fumble before, and yes, it is Chip Ganassi. I don't think either Chip or Joe would be too excited about Kyle doing that if Kyle was in Joe's employ. But I do think that that kind of thing, again, is always fun to watch, but sometimes just not very practical. And I think if the two races were a little bit closer, I could see that happening, but definitely not with the distance apart, I wouldn't think anyway. But then again, who knows? And Kyle Larson certainly has now proven he's a threat to win in anything he races, including a Sprint Cup Series car.
Yeah, and you bring that up, the close proximity. It's too bad that the Mini Gold Cup wasn't this past weekend, because that would have been interesting.
Yeah, it would have been. It would have been very interesting. And, unfortunately, sometimes the scheduling things just don't quite work out. But, who knows? Maybe one of these days down the road, we'll see Kyle Larson back pulling some strings and saying, hey, Chip, I'm going to go do this. And maybe Chip will say, okay, fine. I may not always like it, but fine. But with that, guys, as always, it's a lot of fun having Steven, you, and Clint coming on and talking dirt with us, getting down and dirty. We appreciate the contribution to the show. Looking forward to getting some more content from you this weekend as the Northeast dirt racing scene really gets going. Looking forward to it, and hope you guys, as well as everybody else who's going to be going to the racetracks this weekend up at the Northeast, have a safe and very exciting weekend.
We will do it, and we're going to be sending you a feature about Eric Rudolph going big block modified racing. We'll be sending that off to you tonight, and folks can check that out on Race Chaser, coming out soon.
And Tom, before we go to commercial, just to put a little bow on this dirt segment, let's go from 4 wheels to 2 for just a minute and talk about a guy who has conquered the mighty Ricky Carmichael. And the fact that in Toronto Saturday night, James Stewart stormed away to victory lane yet again. It's his 4th win of 2014 in the Monster Energy Supercross, and his 49th career win overall, breaking 2nd all-time Ricky Carmichael. He now only has Jeremy McGrath to catch at 72 wins on the all-time Supercross list. Don't know if he'll get there before he hangs up the helmet, but I tell you what a resurgence it's been for James Stewart this season. After last year, he really couldn't get out of his own way. Comes back this season, 4-time winner. He's 30 points back in the championship, but even if he doesn't catch RV1 for the season title, a very, very impressive season and a milestone season for James Stewart.
Yeah, and to hear James say, I'm speechless after a race win, and say something to the effect of, that was possibly one of my best races ever. I mean, that's just, it's great. James deserves every bit of success that he gets, and, just so much to talk about in the 2 wheels these days with Ryan Villapoto and James Stewart, and just so much going on and so much competition. I mean, it's really been kind of fun to watch what I feel like is a bit of a growth spurt in terms of more or less national motorsports conversation for these guys. And it's been a long time coming, but it just seems like it's becoming a little bit more mainstream. And of course, with with the advent of the new TV network there, designed to cover some of these events and some other events in the NASCAR Regional Series and such, I think it's great to be able to know that we can go online and watch these guys run. And James Stewart getting a win in and of itself is not a surprise, but of course this was a big one. And like I said, it's just great to see that this is becoming a little bit more a mainstream conversation now instead of just sort of a niche for bike enthusiasts.
That's exactly right, and I'm very excited to bring some more of the two-wheel content, especially with the package that Fox Sports has put together this season. It's been really, they've done a great job with the coverage. Glad to see all the Supercross races live on Fox Sports this year, whether it's FS1 or one or two races on FS2, but the majority live on FS1, which is a fantastic deal for the bike guys. Certainly a great deal going forward for them, a 5-year TV package. So a lot of good things going. But James Stewart, the man, as he eclipses Ricky Carmichael, 49 career wins in Monster Energy Supercross. And with that, we are going to take a caution flag, and when we come back, we're going to hear from our final feature interview of the night as we sit down with Andretti Autosport Pro Mazda driver and IMSA Continental Tire Sports Car Challenge pilot Shelby Blackstock. Familiar name associated with him, but you'll hear more about that after these words. You're listening to Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. We'll be back right after this.
Did you know that most teens who drink alcohol get it from people they know? Usually their friends or family members. But regardless of where they get it, alcohol puts teens at risk for injury, to themselves and to others. You can help make it a safe summer for the teens you know. Don't serve them alcohol. It's unsafe, it's illegal, and it's irresponsible. Find out more at don'tserveteens.gov. That's don'tserveteens.gov. A message from the Federal Trade Commission and this station.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, Kyle Souza around the round table. And Tom, time to get to our final feature interview of the night with a driver who has a lot going for him in two different divisions for 2014. Really enjoyed talking with him, and he's another promising younger talent from Andretti Autosport at 23 years old in the Pro Mazda class for his second go-round this season, and that's Shelby Blackstock. Shelby also going to be running some Continental Tire Sports Car Challenge events this season on the IMSA road racing side. How about this, though? Blackstock, just one of those great rising talents, picked up the win in the Continental Tire Sports Car event at Daytona International Speedway to kick off this season. Had an incredible drive. This young man is a versatile driver who can get it done anytime in whatever equipment he's given. He just goes out and goes for it and runs fast.
You know, he really is a versatile driver, and it's neat to see somebody that shows the capability in those two particular disciplines, because although they're similar, they're quite different in terms of, you know, the what it requires of a driver. And it's interesting that at 23 years old, he's the elder statesman of the Andretti development group, but Shelby's an interesting character, and I really enjoyed hearing the interview earlier when we were working on it, putting it together. I really enjoyed hearing him talk about not just how he got started in racing, but there's an interesting nickname that he has, which our listeners will hear in the interview. He'll talk about that. It's a pretty funny story. And, of course, he will talk about, he's got a very famous, for those of you who don't know Shelby Blackstock, he's got a very famous mom, and he'll talk about her and his dad as well, and just a really, really neat story, and somebody that you want to follow and want to keep your eye on, and so looking forward to hearing this. Let's check it out.
Jacob Seelman for Speed 77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com, sitting down for a special featured interview with 2014 Andretti Autosport and Continental Tire Sports Car Challenge driver Shelby Blackstock. Shelby, first off, thank you for taking some time to talk with us this afternoon. And your 2014 season started fast and has continued to escalate here as we've moved into the spring months of the season. Had a big win in the Continental Tire Series at Daytona. Just a lot of success for you early in 2014. Talk a little bit about what the beginning of your season's been like, and talk a little bit about what it meant to you to get that season-opening win at Daytona, a place that holds so much prestige over all divisions of motorsports.
Yeah, and thank you very much for letting me call in. And it's definitely been a good start to the 2014 season. It's definitely been a long, hard off season of getting ready for the season, and with testing and getting in physical and mental shape to get ready to go for the wins. And we started our year off in Continental Tire Sports Car Challenge with IMSA at the Daytona International Speedway. Every single session we went out, the car was insanely fast. I'm driving now with Following Motorsports and a BMW M3, and every single session we seem to be either in the top 5 or on P1. So it was a good start to the season, and the only downside we had was the qualifying effort. Ashley Freiberg, she did really, really well, but we kind of got chipped, and we only got a 1 lap, and she never got a radio transmission, so we started 15th, and then we started the race, and went from 15th to 5th. Then I got in the car, and we stayed in the top 5 the whole time, and we were able to pull a win out, and it was a great way to start the season. I'm very excited to go to St. Pete next week to start the season with Andretti Autosport in the Pro Mazda division on the Mazda Road to Indy. It should be, hopefully the streak continues.
What's it been like for you jumping back and forth between the Continental Tire Series car, the sports car, and the open-wheel car on the Pro Mazda side with Andretti Autosport? I know you've not been in race conditions yet in Pro Mazda this year, but certainly some testing getting ready for the start of the season. What's it been like for you shifting between the two divisions, and what are some of the differences you've encountered between the two cars?
I've never had a problem jumping back and forth between the Pro Mazda or the M3. It's my brain kind of already, when I get in one, my brain's already ready to go, and I already know what I have to do in order to make that car fast. But just going back and forth in between the two cars, yeah, I am very excited to get St. Pete ready. It's the only mindset going in is with the BMW where you already have so much momentum going through. And so there's a little bit, the confidence level is a little bit high. And Pro Mazda side, you don't really know what to expect. So it's, I'm kind of on the edges of seeing what team's going to bring us. We already have, we've already done a whole race weekend. We did the Winterfest presented by Mazda and the Mazda Road to Indy to kind of get the kids back in the roast of things. And this year is a little bit different, as last year was a little bit different. Last year we got a new tire compound, Cooper tires, with a wide front tire, and this year we're going to a skinny front tire, which definitely has helped some teams and hurt some others, and unfortunately I think we were on the hurting side. So hopefully going into St. Petersburg, we got everything worked out and go for a couple of wins.
You've got a lot of support and a lot of team help behind you in the Andretti Autosport Pro Mazda class. You've got a teammate in Matthew Brabham who just moved out of Pro Mazda, who's left you and your teammate Garrett Grist with a lot of notes, I know, and a lot of momentum going to St. Pete. But working with Garrett and some of the other guys on the Andretti Autosport team, what's the dynamic been like, and how have you been able to learn from the rest of your teammates as you've started 2014?
Last year was a great year with Matt, especially with his family name and everything with his dad, Jeff Brabham there. It's kind of listening to Yoda tell us what we're doing wrong and what we need to fix and all that kind of stuff. And it was a great year last year. This year going with Garrett Grist, actually the fantastic year that Matt had last year is all those notes are almost hopeless for us because of the tire change, and the tire makes the car react so differently that Garrett and I now have to figure out our own way to make the car fast and kind of change a lot of stuff that we did last year. But Garrett's is an awesome kid to work with. He's really young. He's still maturing, but he's really fast. So it's definitely interesting to see both sides come together. And we should get along great, and we should hopefully have a couple of good finishes at St. Pete. Hopefully we're 1-2.
I know, looking back at the start of your career, originally didn't look like you were going to head down the path that you're on. You started at the University of Arizona and then struck a deal and ended up at the Bondurant High Performance Racing School after your first year of college. But going all the way back, I've heard this story, but I want you to tell it for some of the race fans out there. Your passion first got ignited when your parents bought you a couple of go-karts to ride and told you can do anything except drive in the grass, and you ended up up figuring out how to 180 it at the end of the driveway to keep from hitting the grass, and from there it just seemed like you being behind the wheel was where you were meant to be.
Yeah, definitely. And the go-karts that you were talking about, for a lot of race fans, they know of like the race carts that kids learn in all over the world, that they've kind of improved their racecraft and improved their ability and everything. These are not those carts. These are from Walmart, like lawnmower engines and with roll cages in them, and they're full on redneck mobiles. But we definitely ran those things a lot, and that was the rules of not running the grass. We could run in the fields as much as we want, but not in the grass. So we learned how to spin the carts around and stay on the pavement. But of course, a lot of times the tires would hook and we'd roll the things multiple times. But so in the end, we found out ways how to do it with not flipping and not to mess anything up. So it was definitely learning from there. And which motorsports I've always been interested in cars and working on them and driving them and whatnot. And when I went to college, I wanted to get into anything with cars. So I was like, yeah, do you have anything with car design? They're like, well, you have to be an art major. That's 2 more years at a different college to learn the basics. So I was like, well, yeah, that's definitely out of the question. I was like, what about aerodynamics? And they said, well, you have to be a space major, and that's like 3 more years. And I was like, yeah, no, thank you for that. So it kind of struck a deal with my parents to send me to a driving school, and went to Bondurant out in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, and a lot of other teams have sent their drivers there to kind of a refresher course, you would say, and I was faster than all of them first session out, which kind of led to more things. And the school told me to go to Skip Barber to try to improve my craft, and went there, competed there, and kind of worked my way up the ranks till where I'm at now.
I know a lot of race fans may not make the association right offhand, but your mom is country legend Reba McEntire. I know a lot of people probably ask you a lot what it's like to have a parent with the stature that your mom has, but I want to look at it from a different angle. What's it like when she's able to come watch you at the racetrack? Because I know probably a little bit out of her element, just a tad.
You would think that, and yeah, at first my mom and dad were both other elements, but I mean, now they're full on. I mean, I'm hugely into racing, and obviously, but now like I'll get texts from them saying, "Hey, are you watching this race on such and such network?" And I'm like, "Who the heck's racing right now?" So they're super into racing now, and my mom has obligations and she can't make it to the race. She's absolutely devastated. So it's definitely it's become a family thing now, and they're all into it. They love coming to the races, and it was definitely from the first race they ever went to, which was actually at Daytona. That was the first race, the professional race I actually saw. And I could have chose a nicer venue to kind of ease their way into it, because the first time they ever saw me in a race car professional series, I was 5 wide going into turn 1 at 185 miles an hour. So apparently my mom almost fainted, and my dad he's like, well, screw this. Why are we doing this? And but now they definitely turned to 180, and they love coming to the races, and yeah, they're having the time of their life.
I know your roots are in Tennessee and music country. I have to ask, where did the nickname Shellbilly come from? Because I know there's got to be a story behind that, and I'm sure it has something to do with your Southern heritage along the lines.
Yeah, a little bit. So from going back to how my mom's career was, like, I've lived in Tennessee, New York, L.A., North Carolina, where I am now, and I've kind of moved around a lot. And being from Tennessee, especially Lebanon, Tennessee, of all places, there's actually the story came when I moved out to California, and I had a good friend named Jacob Moss, and him and I hit it off right off the bat. And all of a sudden, one day, he just called me Shellbilly, because obviously my name's Shelby, and I'm a hillbilly to their eyes. So it kind of just took off from there. And as soon as I got into racing, some people, like, because I'm very kind of, you'd say I'm kind of wild at the racetracks. I'm very happy to be there, so I'm kind of goofy. But I am also professional. But when the goofy side comes out, they want to call me, like, goofball or something like that. And I just told one of them, like, no, you can call me Shellbilly. Then he's like, oh, I like that a lot better. And it just kind of took off from there. It became my Twitter name, and basically what a lot of people call me around the racetrack now. So it's kind of a joke went into a big, huge deal. And definitely Jacob Moss is very proud of that he started that.
Looking at 2014, moving into the Pro Mazda class, I know it's going to be a little bit of a jump for you, continuing to run some of the Continental Tire Series events as well. Where do you set the expectations in the two classes for 2014? Obviously had a fast start in the Continental Tire car. Where do you set the bar for yourself for this year?
I set it really high. Last year we did very well in Pro Mazda. We finished third, and this year going back to go for the championship, I'm setting it really high. It's kind of, if you're off the podium, that's pretty much unacceptable. And if you're, I mean, obviously if things out of your hand doesn't happen, but, and it's winning everything. That's pretty much the goal. And if we're still on the podium, we still got work to do to be first. So it's definitely a different aspect. Last year I wanted to get the best finishes I could possibly get. If I'm on the podium a lot, I'm happy. This year it's all about winning and really nothing else. In Continental's a big side of just doing the same mental aspect, just trying to be at the front and getting with talking to manufacturers and talking about future goals down the road and stuff like that, how to get rides in the bigger races such as the 24, the 12, and the 6-hour races in the Tudor Series. But so it's definitely the bar's been raised. You can say mentally wise, just to want to win as much as I can, want to be in the podium as much as I can, and it's kind of going back to the outlook on how I was in Skip Barber. I never wanted to go home empty-handed, and that's kind of how this year's going. So hopefully the success continues.
And I know you can't do it alone. I know you got a lot of people, team members, and supporters behind you helping to make all this possible. So I'm going to step back and let you give some shout-outs to those people who have helped you along the way. Talk about who makes it happen for Shelby Blackstock.
Obviously, for sports, my mom and dad, thank you very much. I wouldn't be where I am without you guys. With Andretti Autosport and Fall Line and Roush Performance giving me the opportunities to get in their cars and to at least show them what I have and to have all the success I've had so far, and motivated eyewear. And we just now brought on Sparco clothing and footwear for my 2014 campaign. So hopefully everything continues on and the success continues and keep moving up the ladder, hopefully to IndyCar one day.
And I know we're looking forward to watching the rise continue for you in 2014 on the track, Shelby. Again, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and look forward to seeing you hit the track for the first race of the Pro Mazda season at St. Pete, as well as your continued success in the Continental Tire Series for the rest of 2014.
Thank you very much.
Just an incredible talent, I believe, Shelby Blackstock is turning into. Going to be very interesting to see where he goes for the rest of 2014. I know he's really, really excited about the rest of this season, very excited about the Continental Tire Sports Car Challenge events, very excited about all of the Andretti Autosport Pro Mazda events he's going to run this season. They think he's going to be a very strong contender for the championship here in 2014. But as we get ready to roll to conclusion, Kyle, I want to turn to you because we've just got done seeing one of the most incredible events so far this season at Fontana, California. And now we go to one of the smallest tracks on the schedule that always poses some interesting drama as well. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, Martinsville Speedway. It's time, and your first time here talking with us about maybe picking a winner here as we go into our 77 and Race Chaser performance picks. I'm going to throw it to you first. Who do you like this weekend at Martinsville, and who do you think is going to take the checkered flag first this weekend?
Well, this weekend I'm going to go, maybe a little bit of a surprise to some, but a returning Denny Ham went off that sinus infection. I think Denny's going to be strong. He was strong the first couple of races before it went out, but I think Denny takes the W Sunday afternoon. He's been due. Of course, he won at Homestead last year. He won the Sprint Unlimited this year, but Denny's been due for one of these short track victories, and I think it finally comes this weekend. That FedEx 11 ran good yesterday with Hornish in it for most of the day, but he should be able to take the W this weekend. I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin.
All right, Tom, I want to turn to you. You're next up on the chopping block here. Martinsville is an unpredictable place where anything can happen, and usually anything does happen. Who do you like for this weekend on the short track bull ring that is the only original track left standing on NASCAR's schedule?
Well, I know a hot hand when I see one. And I'm going to go with the driver with a target on his back. Kyle Larson's going to get his first win at Martinsville this weekend on the short track. I just really feel like he is really in a good place right now in terms of his mental game when it comes to driving stock cars. And I know this is a bit of a departure here for him in terms of the short tracks and, really having to work the brakes and all of that. But I just really feel like Kyle Larson has been on a bit of a momentum roll here since the season started. And I think last week, this past weekend here, he really has shown what he's capable of. So, like I said, I know a hot hand when I see it. And, although my heart is telling me to go with, or my head is telling me to go with Jimmy Johnson, my heart is definitely with Kyle Larson this weekend. And I think that would be really cool to see him get his first win at Martinsville. And, oh, by the way, not for nothing, but I would not be at all surprised if we see Ben Rhodes finish in the top 10 in his first ever truck start, and ditto for Brandon Jones in his initial start. I just think these are two very talented young racers, and I'd love to see both of them do well in their first race out of the box. And I think they both have the ability in their first initial starts on the track to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon's not raced yet at Martinsville, had a couple of starts last year, but I think it's going to be interesting. And yeah, I do think these guys are going to be very, very good this weekend. We know their equipment is very, very capable. So we'll have to see what happens there. But Tom, you said you weren't going to go with your head. Well, guess what? I am going to go with mine, and I'll be riding it all the way to my second win of the season, I'm pretty sure, because I'm going to be watching Jimmy Johnson take home yet another grandfather clock this weekend. You didn't pick him, so gosh, I will. Johnson goes to victory lane. He's only got, like 8 of them already. I know he's given a few away to family and friends, but I'd say he's about due to have another timekeeper in the house. So Jimmy Johnson wins at Martinsville this weekend. And Tom, before we go, little birdie just told me that there's going to be an announcement of IndyCar proportions on Good Morning America tomorrow, just before 9 a.m., and Dario Franchitti's going to be making, gosh, it's been a little while since we've talked about Dario, but what on earth could he possibly be announcing?
He's taught Chip Ganassi to speak Scottish.
I can just picture Chip Ganassi speaking Scottish, and I can't picture him with the accent and everything, but I have to imagine it'd be funny listening to Dario trying to teach him and stop the fumbling. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I don't really know, honestly. I think this is going to be interesting. First of all, the idea that he's going to be on Good Morning America to announce this, you would almost wonder if it wasn't some sort of a television-related announcement. I mean, Good Morning America is on ABC. ABC carries the Indy 500. Is he going to be in the broadcast booth? I mean, I really don't know. I'm going to be very interested to hear what Dario has to say in the morning, and I'm sure that I will have my office TV tuned to Good Morning America for that announcement and have some comment on it afterward. Tomorrow is my blog day, so the Tom Time blog could be pretty interesting tomorrow for sure.
Isn't it always, though? That's what makes it fun. But you know what, Tom? I wouldn't pay to see Dario teach Chip Ganassi how to speak Scottish. I'd pay to see Dario teach Ganassi how to play the bagpipes. Now that would be a show indeed. But for now, we come to the end of our show tonight. It's been an amazing 2 hours of motorsports. Want to give a shout out real quick to Patrick Star-Coley. He won the K&M Pro Series West event this weekend at Irwindale Speedway, winner of the Peak Stock Car Green Challenge last year. Congratulations. We'll have more on that event on our Thursday Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports show. Also want to give congratulations to Mark Marquez. After a broken leg in the offseason, he comes back and beats the king, Valentino Rossi, to pick up the first MotoGP victory of the season. So congratulations to those guys. And For everybody here at Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online, for Tom Baker, Kyle Souza, Joel Sebastianelli, Stephen Ovens, Clint Miller, and everybody that makes it happen behind the scenes and behind the microphones, I'm Jacob Seelman, inviting you to keep it tuned to RaceChaserOnline.com for all the latest from around the world of motorsports, including featured audio, all the latest news from around the motorsports world, and much, much more. Until Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, where Tom, Kyle, and I will be back at it. This is Jacob Seelman for Speed77 Radio, inviting all you race fans to keep it off the wall until we meet again, and we'll see you at the racetrack, folks. So long and have a safe racing weekend.